December 10th, 2008. Inside a $7 million Manhattan penthouse, a 70-year-old Bernie Madoff sits across from his two sons. Wearing a bathrobe in the dim light, he confesses to them that his legendary investment advisory business is entirely fabricated. His sons had worked alongside him for years. They attended the industry dinners and accepted awards for extraordinary leadership, completely believing in their father's brilliance. Now they sit in silence as he tells them he is running a giant Ponzi scheme and that he has absolutely nothing left. The brothers stand up, walk 2 blocks to a lawyer's office, and make a phone call. The following morning, federal agents arrest Madoff in the lobby of his own building. Within days, prosecutors estimate the scale of the fraud at nearly $65 billion. The scale of the destruction is staggering, but it hides a deeper mystery. The largest financial fraud in history didn't rely on complex algorithms or offshore shell companies. It relied on a secret that was hiding in plain sight. There were no complex financial instruments hiding the money. There were no algorithmic trading systems operating at the absolute edge of what the law permits. This diagram shows the actual mechanics of Madoff's empire. Between 1986 and 2008, all client deposits were routed into a single Chase bank account, known internally as Account 703. When older clients wanted to make a withdrawal, Madoff simply took the deposits from new investors and transferred those exact funds directly back out to pay them. He deposited investor funds into a single account and used new money to pay old returns. That is the whole trick. Since Charles Ponzi ran this exact scheme almost a century earlier, the real question is how Madoff's psychological manipulation blinded the smartest financial system in the world for 30 years. This chart compares volatile, jagged market activity against Madoff's reported returns. While most frauds appealed to naked greed with promises of doubling your money overnight, Madoff promised safety. He guaranteed a boring, predictable 10 to 15% return year after year, regardless of market conditions. That promise is a siren song for vulnerable demographics. Madoff's client list filled with charitable foundations, pension funds, and Holocaust survivors. These were people who had spent decades building their lives and simply wanted a safe harbor to protect what they had left. He protected this illusion through extreme selectivity. You could not simply call his office and hand him your money. He refused to advertise. To get in, you had to be referred by an existing client and then formally invited to join the fund. When investors are invited into a highly exclusive circle by a financial master, they feel privileged. To question his methods would mean questioning the friend who introduced them and questioning their own good fortune. Madoff carried massive authority because he actually earned it early in his career. In the 1960s and 70s, he recognized that floor-based trading was inefficient. He helped build the electronic trading systems that eventually became the NASDAQ stock market, later serving as its chairman. Inside the Lipstick Building in Midtown Manhattan, floors 18 and 19 housed his completely legitimate trading business.
The technology was world-class, the compliance was thorough, and it generated enough real revenue to sustain his public image. But accessible only through a private elevator, the 17th floor was an entirely different operation. Down there, a small team would review historical market reports to see which stocks had performed well. Then they would use older computers to backfill fake paper trades, matching those past successes onto official-looking statements. Madoff's history of innovation provided the perfect cover, allowing a primitive fraud to operate in the shadows of a world-class firm. This graphic visualizes the math that caught the eye of a quantitative analyst named Harry Markopolos. Looking at 14 years of Madoff's data, Markopolos noticed only 4 losing months. In baseball terms, while an elite player might bat .300, Madoff was batting .966. He knew within 5 minutes the math was statistically impossible. Markopolos spent the next 8 years trying to raise the alarm. He submitted detailed, mathematically undeniable warnings to the Securities and Exchange Commission on 5 separate occasions, explicitly stating the fund was a fraud. The SEC actually opened 8 separate investigations into Madoff's advisory business between 1992 and 2008. Over all those inquiries, they never once executed the single most basic regulatory step, verifying Madoff's trades with an independent third party. They were paralyzed by the halo effect. Because Madoff had helped write Wall Street's rules, SEC examiners were deeply intimidated by his aura. They chose to rely on his personal assurances rather than investigate the cold mathematical realities sitting on their desks. It took a global force to finally break the illusion. As markets began collapsing in 2008, liquidity evaporated across the entire financial system. Suddenly, investors all over the world desperately needed cash at the exact same time. This diagram shows the fatal arithmetic of December 2008. By that month, clients submitted $7 billion in redemption requests, but account 703 held only $234 million. Madoff had exhausted his credit lines. There was no money left. You can manipulate human trust indefinitely with reputation and exclusivity, but raw market mathematics cannot be charmed or intimidated. Eventually, the math demands actual capital, instantly shattering the fiction. The fallout was absolute. $47 billion in paper profits vanished entirely. Charities dissolved. Pension funds failed. The human toll extended into deep tragedy, resulting in the suicides of a devastated client and Madoff's own son, Mark. The origin of this massive destruction is terrifyingly small. Decades earlier, Madoff's legitimate business suffered a loss. Rather than tell his clients he had a bad quarter, he covered it up with his own money. A brilliant young man simply could not admit an early trading failure to clients who expected perfection. Madoff dismantled thousands of lives to sustain the image of a man who never failed. He demonstrated that in a global market, trust without independent verification functions as a catastrophic systemic risk.